and welcome back to another one of our videos, and today we're going to look at an L shape. And often an L shape gets mixed in with the asymmetrical triangle, and they really are two quite different arrangements. Now the L shape, as it says, is a recreated design in the shape of an L, whereas an asymmetrical triangle is more of a triangle shape where one side is longer than the other side. So with an L shape, we follow the rules and sort of regulations relating to a line arrangement as opposed to a massed design, which the triangle is. So we tend to categorise designs into line designs or mass designs, and the L shape needs to be quite slimline, so the L shape needs to be quite slimline rather than a full mass design like we looked at last week when we created an asymmetrical triangle. Now, if we think a little bit about our floral foam, last week we did an asymmetrical triangle, so we had a mass design that needed a lot of flower content in it, so I needed a large piece of floral foam. This week, today's design is an L shape. It's a line arrangement, so it uses less flower content. It's far more minimal in its arranging, so therefore I need a smaller piece of foam. If you can imagine, by the time I've covered all this floral foam, I'm going to have a very prominent section in the middle, which will lose that very elegant shape that I'm trying to create. Now again, if I need side placements, I need to have foam above my container. If I'm doing something quite contemporary and quite modern, then I would keep the floral foam in the same level or lower than my container. So for today, this piece of foam I've got here is way too big. What I'm probably going to do is just turn it on its side. So I now have that 1/3 of a block, which is ample size for me to arrange my flowers in. And I'm going to place it slightly off centre, or as far over to the left hand side as I can. And then I'll use some smaller pieces just to wedge that in and make sure it's not going to move around. Almost a bit of a jigsaw now to keep that nice and secure. And the reason I'm doing it off centre, so if I turn it round for you to see, I'm going to come down the side with the almost backbone of my L shape, and then I'm going to come off to the side. If I'd have placed my foam in the centre, I would have had all of the shorter side to fill in, and then I would lose that characteristic outline of the L shape. So I've gone off centre. I'm not going to be arranging in any of these pieces of foam that are low down in my container. I'm just going to use this main large piece. And to reinforce it, we'll use the Oasis tape, floral tape, pot tape, lots of different names to it. Try and remember to keep your container dry so that the tape will adhere to it nice and firmly. And I'm going to make sure that that's really stable by adding some extra tape on left and right. So we'll just clear that down and get rid of what we don't need. So at the moment you're looking at it from the back. I'm going to be arranging with my L shape coming this way, and I'll turn it around for you to see. So good, strong, secure mechanics. And my flower content today is going to be using the yucca leaf that we've had a couple of times over the last couple of weeks. And if you think about visualising that into an L, it's a really strong foliage to create the outline shape. If you don't have something like the yucca, then you could use New Zealand flax, ruscus from a florist shop, a privet would be wonderful, or you could even just use some branches or some twigs, pussy willow, that type of thing. Then I have some eucalyptus, and again a nice straight strong piece, and to cover the focal area and to give me almost a resting place at the base there, I have some of the Pittosporum. This is Pittosporum tabayra. It's the larger leafed variegated Pittosporum. You could use this to create your L shape. It would be perfectly acceptable, but I think I'm going to maybe use it down lower. We'll see how it progresses. I also have some of the Devil's Ivy, and this was a house plant, and I'm just using up the foliage that's in the plant, and again this will help emphasize my focal area. I might not use it all, but I have a selection available if I need it, and I'm going with a blue and yellow colour combination today, and we have the wonderful Delphinium. This is the Vulcan-free Delphinium, and I've removed all the foliage off there so that we don't get very scruffy lines. And I have a very vibrant yellow rose, wonderful big-headed yellow rose. Now I've chosen the round low down container to use because it was the same container that I used in the asymmetrical triangle, so that you can at least get a comparison between the two designs, and you can look at them side by side in the photograph and see how they differ from one design to the other. Okay, so we're going to start by creating the outline shape, and I'll start with the foliage I think this time, and the end of the yucca is a little bit damaged and a little sad looking, so we'll just remove that off with a point, and you'll see that my angled point is far more pleasing to the eye than a straight cut. This doesn't make your eye gently leave the design, whereas if we go for an angled cut, your eye follows upwards and then gets lost into the distance. And as my container doesn't have a great deal of height to it, I'm going to use the width as a guideline. It's a small container, it's pretty much insignificant, and the same sort of traditional rules apply. So we're 1/3 and 2/3. We're using the rule of threes, and I'm using the width because it's the widest part of my container to create my height, and that's where double the height of my container would be. But because this is quite an elegant design, it's a line arrangement, the container is very insignificant. It doesn't mean I have to follow those specific instructions, and for me this line material is so elegant and attractive, I'm going to use it to its full height, and that will give me my overall proportions for my design, and we'll work off the height of this piece of foliage. And you'll see that I'm about 2/3 of the way back on the foam. So I'm not right at the back where my material can fall off. I'm not right at the front. I'm allowing plenty of room in the front to add more flowers and foliage. And my L will now come off to my right hand side as I'm creating it, quite severely to the right hand side. Again, we'll just choose one that has a nice shape, and this one is arching down a little wards, and that will make your eye travel downwards. If we place it into the design at this angle, it almost sends it shooting off into the distance. And I'm going to look to create my L. So if I just show you that as an example, that's almost the same height, and if we bring this out here at the side, that would be fine if you were creating a design to go in a big area, but for my quantity of flowers, that's probably going to create too big a design. So I may be going to go about 2/3 of the length. And again, if you look at the letter L, you will find that the upright part of the L is longer than the side horizontal placement. So that I think is going to be a pleasing size for my size of my container, and straight away we've got a lovely L shape started. And what we would have done last week when we did the asymmetrical triangle is we would have tried to create a line of material and flowers and foliages in this gap here, but with this design we're going to bring our eye down the front and then off to the side to accentuate that L shape. We're not bringing a great deal of material on this side here in the same proportions as we did before. So I'm just going to strengthen my upright placement with another one of the leaves. And I've cut this into a little point there at the bottom, so I have less going into the foam. And I've staggered them slightly so they're not repeating the exact shape. There's a gap in between them so we create depth. And then, so what I'm not going to do with this design is use the pointed yucca leaf at the front, because it's going to draw your eye forward, whereas I'm trying to encourage the movement of my eye to go from left to right. What I probably will do is just bring a smaller leaf, we'll cut that shorter. Again, it will help create some depth, but it'll make my eye travel to the shorter side of the L. Then my fuller type foliages and the smaller pieces of the eucalyptus will be used better towards the front to give me some depth. Now again, at the moment we haven't brought anything towards the back. We'll look at that in just a second. And now I'm going to look for a smaller piece of the eucalyptus. Now if I compare these two together, you'll see that this one is very bushy. The leaves are much larger on it. So if I added this in at the back, it's almost too fussy and it will be quite detracting from the lines I've already created. So I'm going to choose this one, which is a little bit thinner. It's not quite so full, and hopefully that won't lose the L shape that I've started to create. And again, I've stepped it forward slightly so that we have some depth starting to take place, and the shorter pieces that I have left are easily used at the back to help me create some depth. So you can see from the side we have 3 placements. That will give me depth, help my eye travel towards the back, and it will stop the design looking very flat. Okay, so I don't think we're going to use that one because it's quite full. Got a few more pieces here, and we'll pick the smaller ones. Oop, just knock that out of place. Right, okay, so now I'm going to bring some of that ruscus, again accentuating that L shape. Did I just call it ruscus? I meant eucalyptus. And some towards the front to give me my depth again and create the outline shape of my arrangement. So what we've pretty much done now is we've created the outline shape. We have height and we have widths and we have depth, the 3 important factors in making a design. And you can see I'm keeping this section here very narrow. I'm not creating width, I'm keeping it flat and close to the floral foam so that L shape is exaggerated. The minute I add width to this arrangement, it becomes an asymmetrical triangle. Fill in at the back again, short little pieces. Now what we don't want to do is fill this section here, because if we fill this, it becomes that asymmetrical triangle again. It becomes an unbalanced massed design rather than this line arrangement. Okay, so now at the moment we have these placements of the yucca foliage, which is dark green. They are pointy, they're a line material, so they're quite dominant, and I don't have a link between them. They're almost like I often refer to as these flappy arms or wings on either side. And ideally what I need to have is something that's green and a similar texture to link them together. And this is where I'm going to use this flat devil's ivy, because the colour is as similar as I can get. It will break up the grey and give me a contrast in texture. and they're not going to be overpowering and too busy in this middle section. Remembering that it's a line arrangement rather than a massed design, so I need to keep it quite simple. And the shorter pieces of foliage are going to the shorter side of my design. And even by just adding those 3 pieces in, I now have a colour link between the outside. I've almost covered my focal area, and I've got contrast in textures and colours. Okay, so we've pretty much got our shape there, lovely clear L shape, not too cluttered. And now I'm going to use my line material. The Delphinium is what we would refer to as a line, whereas the rose here is something we would refer to as a point or a round shape. And I'm going to exaggerate the outline shape that we've created with the foliage by using the blue Delphinium. And again, the same principles apply. The smaller flowers go towards the outside, so I'm just looked to try and find the Delphiniums that have the smaller head. So if we compare these two, this one here that is larger is far better used towards the focal point, and then this one, which is narrower and smaller, would be better used towards my edge. And I'm staggering them down, so the outline has been created with my yucca foliage, and I'm just going to place the 2 in for a moment for you to see. You'll see there that your eye will pick up the outer foliage and step down until it finds the flower, and then it will keep working its way down when I add more flowers in the minute. And the same works here on the outer edge. My eye picks up the line material and it will move in towards the centre as we go. And what I now need to do is to create a link, which we call rhythm and repetition, between this piece of material here and this blue one on the outside. Otherwise, your eye goes directly to the outside and it misses what's in the middle. So if I had a choice, I would use flowers in the different opening stages. So I would go from the most open flower in the focal point to the buds on the outer edge. But with the Delphinium, I don't have a great deal of choice in the size of the heads, and that's quite normal. I've tried to pick them so that we have a variety in the size of the heads. Not a great deal of difference between those two. And again, I've created my outline shape. I don't want to go outside the shape that I've created. And this is at the moment a line arrangement coming from top to bottom. What I'm not going to do here is to take the colouring out this side, because then it becomes a triangle. I need my eye to start going the opposite way to link up with this one on the outside. I'm probably going to have to cut this one just a little bit shorter, and he will start working its way over to my right hand side. And any smaller bits that you cut off, they can always be used down low to create recession. Now again, bear in mind a little bit that you're looking at this design from a slightly different angle from me. I'm looking down on it, whereas you're looking across. So you might see some area under here which needs covering. But straight away now we've created a link between this one and the edge flower by adding the materials in the middle. But it's still a line arrangement. We don't have a mass of flowers in there, and we don't have very busy foliages and filler flower to fill in the design. What we do have at the moment is very little depth. It's a front facing design, so all the material that we want to look at is at the front, but we also need to bring in some of the blue towards the back. That will help create depth, and it will help our eye move towards the back and make the arrangement 3-dimensional rather than very flat. And often it's only the addition of one flower like this is all we need. The shorter little bit that I cut off, I'll place down low into the focal point, and that will help carry the blue through. Now the blue is a very recessive colour, so if you've been learning about colour theory, if this arrangement was to go in a very dark room, maybe the back of a church or somewhere where there was a lot of wood panelling, this blue would almost disappear, and the yellow that I'm going to add in a moment is a very luminous colour, so that is seen from a very far distance. The yellow flowering would be picked up and the blue would almost disappear. So from the back of the church hall you would see the dots of the yellow flowers and you would lose all of the blue. So always consider learning about how your different flowers look in different environments. Right, okay, so now we'll add this lovely yellow rose. Good strong stem on that one. And I'm going to look just to create another bit of movement from one side to the other. Find some floral foam there. Again, I'm going to remove the foliage off the, I'm going to remove the foliage off the rose. Pop that back down in there because the rose leaf foliage can sometimes be a little bit busy. Now I've just spotted I've got quite a big gap in there which you might be able to see on camera. Remember again that the larger flowers, so the larger rose always comes to the focal point and the smaller rose is towards the outside edge. And what I'm doing here, to just fill that gap that I've spotted, I'm doing exactly the same. I'm bringing a link with the yellow from the main upright placement of the flowers through to the horizontal placements on my right hand side. Now I don't need to add any of the yellow in this side because that will cause your eye to go to this section of the arrangement, whereas we need it to move this way. And again, if you have any petals on your rose that need removing, if they're damaged in any way, just pull them off. And again, if you bring that down now, we have a very severe sort of yellow line down through the middle. And I need to get that colour to move over to the opposite side. Now, they have two roses here. Whoop. That one is obviously a lot smaller than this one. So this is my best choice for the outer edge because it's the smaller flower. Remove any of the foliage that we don't need, so that we have that yellow colour now heading off onto the shorter side. And it's quite plain at the moment. The gap for this arrangement is in this section here. And I'm going to add the bigger of the rose, which will be more towards the focal point. I think that's sitting in a good position there. So it's quite a simple L shape. It's not too complicated, there's not too many flower material in there. So I've chosen the blue and yellow because they are a very different colour combination and they show up quite clearly in the flower arrangement. I felt if I picked pastel colours or colours that blended in, it would be harder for you to be able to see that L shape forming. And again, we've only got two flower types in here. You could add more foliage and flowers. But remember not to clutter this section here because then it becomes a triangle rather than a line and you lose the L shape of the design itself. Now I didn't use the Pittosporum Tabaira, I didn't need to have it. The Devil's Ivy there was enough to accentuate my focal point. There's a little bit of gap around the back that I need to fill in. But other than that, I think that's a very simple idea and a very classic L-shape arrangement. Again, you could make a matching pair to go on either side of the altar or a mantelpiece. And if you're left-handed, I'm right-handed, if you're left-handed, you might find it easier to take your shape in the opposite direction. So a good floral design always has height, it has width, and it has depth. So I think we've at least got 3 of those factors right. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. That's our Monday video, our back to basics sort of series of designs. We've introduced a Friday talk where we discuss various elements and principles of design or any problems that you might be having in flower arranging. Wednesday we'll be back with something a little bit different, and hopefully we'll see you there. So bye for now, and thanks for watching.